Good morning. I guess we should start off with an apology that you're all up so early on a Vegas morning. Great to see you. Thank you so much for the introduction. How many people here currently use Method soap? Thank you. And I got some conversion opportunity here today. Awesome. Yes, what I'm going to do, I'd love to share a little bit of the founding story of Method. I came from a marketing background. And at the heart, I am still a marketer, and I look at everything through a brand marketing lens. So my plan this morning is I'll walk you through a little bit of the founding story, which kind of sets the table for how I think. And I have a really simple narrative that we've been executing at Method, which is everything starts with culture. From a great culture comes great products, and products don't necessarily need to be a physical thing. It's the expression of your product, whether it's a service or a digital format. And if you can get the culture right and you get the products right as a marketer, my life gets much easier because I have an authentic culture to be able to work from, and I've got great products to be able to talk to. So as you just heard, I'm very different than other entrepreneurs, which is I didn't have an area I was passionate about. I didn't see a problem I wanted to solve. But I started my career in London working for an advertising agency, and I really admired, like many entrepreneurs, Richard Branson. And I love how he would go in and find really unsexy categories and he would sex them up. And he would just apply an entertainment model to places it was unexpected. And I didn't think I was smart enough to come up with a business plan. And this is back in 2000 in San Francisco, where I got roommates who were raising $50 million on 50-page business plans. And anything that ended in .com would get funded. But I started looking at this space. And I had this idea that coming from advertising and understanding consumer motivations, I just wanted to find a really tired category, figure out the cultural shift that it missed, and in between would be the business opportunity. And so I started looking at household cleaning, and by no means am I passionate about cleaning. My roommates nicknamed me Marvin. I lived with 6 guys in arguably the dirtiest flat in San Francisco, so this is not the Martha Stewart story. And when I told my mom that I wanted to start a cleaning products company, and they're incredibly supportive people, but she looked at me and she's like, I've never seen you make your bed. Are you sure you're the right person to do this? And as I started digging in, I was looking for that cultural shift. And I was like, this is too big of a category, sea of sameness, and started figuring out, I had a passion for design, this idea of lifestyling of the home. And nobody was thinking about these products as an emotional connection to their home. They're really ugly, they're poisonous, you put them underneath the sink, out of sight, out of mind. And so the first idea was like, well, if you just create them beautiful enough, they could live out on your counter, they'd be more convenient to use. And let's face it, you look at a dish soap on your counter more than you ever use it. And then Adam, who's one of my roommates, we grew up together in Detroit, and he came from came from Stanford with a degree in chemical engineering. And we started looking at the category together and realized, like, wow, like, cleaning is a really dirty industry. You essentially pollute when you clean, use poison to make your home healthier. And then when we looked at the number of childhood poisonings that occurred every year from common household products, we realized we would leave a legacy of harm if we were successful with a traditional toxic cleaner. So we started putting together an idea of how we would disrupt it. And this is a tough business plan. So essentially, imagine running a business plan where you're going to go up against not only some of the biggest multinationals, but the first multinationals. So Unilever and Clorox and P&G, who I like to call P in the motherfucking G. And they've got a 150-year head start. They optimize their factories, and they really own the shelf space. And then we're going to go in and do it with natural cleaners, which at the time was maybe a U.S. segment of $30 million. So it was a pimple on the industry. So the only way we were going to make this work is we had to figure out how do we get the mainstream interested in a green cleaner. We figured naked people was a good way to start. And we really love this idea of blurring the lines of you and your home, and where do you end and your home begins. And I think a great innovation model is just simple appropriation, where you take what's working in one industry and you borrow it to another. So we love this idea of blurring the lines between personal care and home care, and our elevator pitch was Aveda for the home. So with that, in 2001, we went off for a very awkward start. Adam and I pooled together what few dollars we had, and we created our first 4 products. And we started going to all the local grocery stores where you can go in, you can sell to the local manager. They only agree to take it because they realize you're just going to keep coming back until they say yes. We had a little paper route where we would deliver to these 30 stores, and from there we would start building a proof of concept. We didn't have any marketing dollars, so I would offer to do in-store demos, which was my way of doing research. I'm not sure why I'm standing in the liquor aisle. I think I just figured anybody shopping for wine was way more interesting to talk to than somebody shopping for a cleaning product. I don't think Adam's worn a tie since, and I definitely have not worn a lab coat since. And we built it up to 30 stores. We saw that it was working, was starting to resonate. So then we raised some angel money, which you realize why they're called angels, because they rescue you from business death. And from there, we went to about 800 stores on the West Coast. But the only way we were going to make this business work is we needed economies of scale, and we needed a national retailer. So Walmart's not the best place to launch a premium product. Kmart was a train wreck and still is a train wreck. And so that really left Target. And so we raised our Series A, and we shot off our mouth and said that Target's going to love us. They're about design. We're about design. Their guests and our customer aligned beautifully. So we had our first meeting. It went okay. They didn't like the name. I'm like, you're Target. How do you not like Method? They didn't like the colors of the bottle. They didn't like the size of it. And finally, the buyer looks at us, and he's like, guys, I really hate to say it, but it's kind of a snowball's chance in hell. So we're like Dumb and Dumber. You're like, so you're saying there's a chance? And when you take capital from big, powerful, and slightly scary people, the road forward always looks better than the road backwards. And I think, the secret ingredient to any entrepreneur's success is the cliche of persistence, and you just keep moving forward. And coming from marketing, I was able to get then an audience with the marketing department at Target by using Kieran Rashid, the famous industrial designer, as a carrot, who I knew they wanted to work with. So we basically laid out, what capital we had left. We worked with Kieran. We created this entire vision for the category. We got marketing to agree to meet with us, who then agreed to get the buyers to come. And there's nothing worse than going over a buyer's head. And so they show up pretty disgruntled. And our first Kieran product arrived by FedEx that morning at Target headquarters. I had just enough time to fill it with dish soap as the meeting was about to start. And we passed around our first product, which was an inverted dish soap. So we figured when you use dish soap, you're always flipping it over, so why not have it come out from the bottom? That product showed up just in time. I filled it. I didn't even have a chance to test it. And the buyer who said snowball's chance in hell, when he got to him, he squeezed it, and he goes, oh my God, even I would use this. Which is the moment I realized we were saved, but it was also the moment I realized we were pitching a sex toy as a dish soap. It's funny how those things hit you after the fact. When I saw it in his hand, I was like, oh. Regardless, they loved it. And so Target gave us a 90-store test, and they're just like, just hit this number, you have national distribution. We're like, sweet. We started going store to store, setting up, watching our numbers. We're like missing it. We had a problem, which was the fragrances were really unique. And so consumers were pulling off the cap to smell it in a way it wasn't really designed to come off. And so you'd walk in, and these end caps would have the dish soap at the top, and it was raining dish soap on the rest of the product, which is a tough way to sell a product when it's covered in dish soap. So we're cleaning up, we're trying to fix the faulty product, we're giving out coupons, we're still missing the number, we're finally buying all the faulty product, cleaning it up, we're shipping it back to Target, which looks really weird on a P&L. We're still missing the number. And we thought, I started at this point working on my business school applications, figuring this is not going to work. And with any success story, there's tons of lucky breaks. And one of them was a new buyer came on the desk. She looked at how incremental, she loved how differentiated it was, and she gave us national distribution. And this year we'll do over $100 million in sales just at Target, and they've been an amazing partner ever since. So what I'd love to do is kind of walk you through our narrative. And I'd like to share our work in hopes that you'll steal it. I don't like to play consultant. I like to show what we do, and hopefully it inspires you. But please steal our ideas. If you steal them, make it better so I can steal it back from you. And as I said, at Method, everything starts with culture. And if you were to visit our San Francisco office, this is the lobby. And we very rarely have this many guests waiting to see anybody. But we designed it for what we call the huddle. So every Monday morning, we do an all-company meeting, the huddle, and it's not a top-down exercise. We actually draw a name out of a sparkly hat at the end, and whoever's name comes out, you're running the huddle next week. And there is a really pretty, simple agenda we follow, and includes, shout-outs of awesomeness, and there are business updates. And really what it is it gives me a barometer every week of how the culture is doing. And when companies do an all-company or all-hands meeting, it's always a little awkward. If you do it every week, people get good at it, where it is just open sharing and laughter, and it's like any muscle. And for us, this is how we set the tone every week for the culture. And as you guys know, getting the culture right means getting the people right. So we're big believers in prototyping everything, including relationships. So if you're to come interview with us, and you're at the end of the interview process where we're most likely to offer you a job, we don't give you an offer, we give you a homework assignment. And we give you 3 questions. And we ask you to come back and present to the 7 to 10 people who you interviewed with. And you can do whatever you want, interpretive dance, PowerPoint. Just help us walk you through these questions. And we're not looking to see if they're right or wrong. And what it does is people instantly put their guard down. They stop interviewing. They have to start working with you. You get a sense of people's work ethic. You get a sense of, do they come back and ask you questions and start collaborating, or do they go away and then try to come back and impress you? But the last question is always the same, which is, how will you help keep Method weird? And the whole idea is, we want you to show up to work as your personal self, not your professional self. Granted, we want to make sure we like your personal self. And it's to see, can you put your guard down, and can you bring your own personal passion? And what this does is, at the end of a homework assignment, you don't even have to regroup with your team. Just from the feeling in the room, is the chemistry fit right? Are they going to get the job offer or not? And then the first day, we always introduce them at the huddle, and they're pretty much already onboarded, and they're able to hit the ground running. And like all companies, we have values, and we've treated our values a little differently. And one of the things we figured out up front was, the more serious we wanted people to take it, the less serious we should take it ourselves. And like any company growing, resourcefulness is a really important value. And if I said resourcefulness is a value, I don't think anybody would ever play it back. But if you look at who's the ultimate icon of resourcefulness, somebody who can take down an F-16 with chewing gum and a paperclip, MacGyver. We hear MacGyver echoing through the building on a regular basis of how MacGyver of you. It's become a little of a problem with the millennials because they don't know who MacGyver is. So we have to give them the DVD set on their first day, which then they're like, what's a DVD? You're like, oh. One of our other values, and Tony Shea, I think a lot of you guys went to go visit Zappos, and Tony's a great friend, and we actually have stolen some ideas from Zappos along the way. One of them we didn't steal, which is the idea of keep Method weird. I think any company out of San Francisco aspires a little from Austin. But the idea of weirdness is, it's about accepting diversity and different ways of thinking, but if you really think about it, weird people change the world. And so, as a leader, if you want your people to think differently, you gotta go another mile out to kind of create that space. And so for us, the idea of embracing weird is really important, just to get people to think differently every day, because if we're not different, we're dead going up against our competitive set. And one of our challenges when we scale is, everybody asks, we're about 400 employees now. We've got offices in Europe, Asia. We have 2 plants. And everybody always asks is, how do you continue to, keep that culture and that small business spirit when you scale? And I think Zappos is a great example of probably one of the few companies who've done it well. But we have a very simple mantra, which is the bigger we get, the smaller we act. And that was really put to test a couple years ago when we built our first plant in North America, which we call the Soapbox. So we're really proud of this. And what we wanted to do when we went to go build a plant, it wasn't really about juicing our gross margin. It was about creating something that allowed us to better live our values. So from where we built it to who we hired to how we made things, we wanted everything to be an expression of our mission values as people against dirty. So even though this looks like it's in a rural setting, this is actually in the inner city of Chicago. We built the first plant to be built there in 35 years, and we wanted to go where the jobs are needed. And you guys are probably familiar, South Chicago is a really tough neighborhood, and so we're really proud to make that our home. But we didn't stop there. We made sure we hired from the local community, and everybody we hired we call movers and makers. We built the world's largest rooftop greenhouse on top of it because the area is a food desert, partnering with Gotham Greens. We built our own wind turbine solar trees. We use nothing but non-virgin plastic. So everything we see in it is an expression of who we are and who we believe. And we named it the soapbox because we think ultimately it's something we stand on every day to represent what we do. Everything we do here, we allow competitors to come see, and we want to create that ripple effect. And we hope people copy us in the industry. But I think the thing we're most proud of is, as you guys know, and I grew up in a manufacturing family in Detroit, when you have a front office and more of a factory workforce, they're usually two radically different cultures inside the same company. And we didn't want that to happen. And the real litmus test was the year we opened it, we did our prom, which is a story in itself. So we do a prom every year, and our prom was in Chicago. And if you had walked in the room, you've got people who are, Harvard MBAs with people who, had very, very challenging lives, and it was one seamless culture. And when you walk on the factory floor, you're not only amazed that there's men driving pink forklifts, but the number of people who will hug you and just the feeling of it is not what you expect in any sort of factory. And if I had to bring the culture down to one secret sauce, it's this. And how many people here are familiar with design thinking? So it's something I would highly recommend learning more on. And there's two ways of looking at the world traditionally within business. There's business thinking. And business thinking is really good about de-risking, right? And it's about looking at a set of existing options and making the right choice. And in business, you often will reference other success stories to justify what you're doing, which is why we live in a world that there's so much Me Too. But design thinking is about originality. Like if you're a designer and you design something that looks like somebody else, you're a hack, right? And so what we try to do is bring together what I simply call the artist and the operator. And if you look at how we've populated the companies from the top, so at Method, we have a CEO who is an amazing operator, and Adam and I played a little bit more of that artistry role. And you go down the org chart, our head of design sits as a peer as a CFO. We have people inside the organization who make things, and I consider them very much artists. We never tell, like, you're an artist and you're an operator. We want our artists to think like operators and our operators to think like artists. And for us, that ultimately, I think, creates the balance. And what we want to be is one of those few companies in the world that can ship things predictably, run a profitable business, but yet has incredible imagination and creativity. And there's so few companies in the world that do that. I think, and if you look at any company at its heyday, like where Gap was when they were really on top of the world, you had Don Fisher, who was this operator, and Mickey Drexler, who's this great artist. You had Steve Jobs, this artist, Tim Cook as this great operator. And there's so few of those companies. Is the one thing probably the financial world could use more of is getting that artist-operator balance right. And what it allows us to do is prototype. So there's nothing drives me nuttier than when somebody puts together a PowerPoint slide, takes a simple idea, puts it in a triangle, and calls it strategic. And you sit there and go through strategy and strategy. Like, what we try to do is if somebody has an idea, you prototype it. And I believe creativity can inform strategy just as strategy can inform creativity. And whenever something is prototyped, whether it's even a service, and I just watched The Founder on the McDonald's story, and even, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's a great movie, but the way the McDonald brothers were out there on a tennis court using chalk to prototype their kitchen versus spending a lot of time strategically talking about it, I thought was a really powerful example. And the last thing I'll say about culture, but to make all this work, is you need a yes and culture versus a no but. How many people here have done improv? So only a handful. So those of you who've done it are familiar with the idea of yes and. So I'm not a big believer in team building exercises, but the one I do love is improv. And there's pretty much in every city you can find an improv troupe who will come in and do this with your team. And if you've ever watched improv, I mean, it's all about being in the moment. It's the give, the get. It's receiving an idea and building an idea. And in most companies, we're so good when somebody presents an idea, we go, yes, that's a great idea. And then we scan our brain for all of our information. We go, but here's why it probably won't work. And let's face it, there's a lot of people who build careers off of looking smart by saying why something can't happen versus why something can happen. And a yes and culture is when somebody presents an idea, it forces you to go yes and build on that idea. And when you have a culture like that, it just allows fragile little ideas to just flourish in the open, and ultimately a place that's just a joy to go to work. All right, so you get the culture great, and then I think products are nothing more than a souvenir of that culture. And again, I'll talk about products in the physical form, but I think of services, any sort of digital interface, I mean, that is a product. So for me, like, this is my version of marketing. everything starts with getting the product right. And I want to be one of those few companies in the world, and again, Apple and Nike are probably the ones who do it best, where they obsess over the product. And I think advertising at the end is just a tax on an unremarkable product. And we're fortunate we live in such a world of social and digital where great products get discovered and bad products also get discovered. So a couple of the ways we think about innovation is, one, I like to find monsters. So when you look across different industries, the way I simply think about it, there's monsters and there's villains. So Tide is our villain. We hate Tide. Sadly, millions of people love Tide, probably some of you in this room. But monsters attack societies. Like Godzilla is a monster. And if you can go after a monster versus a villain, it gives you a way to connect with your audience. It brings communities together. So one of our briefs we gave to our team was go after the monster of a laundry cap. So why is a laundry cap a monster? Well, if you've ever paid attention, which I doubt you have, there's a line 1 that you're supposed to use. Line 1 is at the bottom of the cap. It's really hard to find. We live in a society where we believe more is better, so we tend to use a lot. So we overdose. It's bad for our machines. It's why these new HE machines start to smell. It's bad for the environment because these products are full of plastic binder. And it's bad for you because the residue stays on your clothes, rubs up against your skin for 12 hours a day. And we all know how patch medicine works. So that goes right into your bloodstream. And so we asked them to slay this monster, and they came back with a way to make laundry detergent. We call it concentrate, but it's really not. It's so small and so effective that we were able to get rid of the cap altogether. Now, getting people to switch laundry detergent is probably harder than getting somebody to try a new cola. So we have a big forecast to hit. I would appreciate if all of you could not only try this, but next time when you're in a store, just drop it into people's carts. It would be a huge help. A second way we innovate is, we really let our teams follow their passions. Like a lot of companies, we do community days. Coastal cleanup is always very popular in California. And the teams would come back with all this ocean plastic off the beaches, send it to a landfill. So they started giving thought to what they would do with it, and this was a pure passion project. And they had some ideas, and it's not that easy to take plastic that's been in the ocean, you can't even identify what type of plastic it is, and turn it back into a functioning bottle. And so they were playing with it. Obama initiated his Green Jobs Act. And before we even knew we could do it, we signed up with Whole Foods, agreed to launch it there. We had 4 members of the Obama cabinet in our office for a press conference. We had the mayor of San Francisco declare it Method Day in San Francisco, which does not get you free drinks in any bar that you want to go to. And I was so proud of the team that they put pressure on themselves to do this. And 6 months later, they launched the first plastic made from ocean plastic, which by no means is this a solution to the problem, but it's our way of bringing awareness to it, of this big issue. Sadly, if you hold the bottle up to your ear, you can't hear the ocean, but we are working on that. And the last way we innovate, and this, I think, within the financial industry is well forgotten. I think one of the most powerful ways to innovate is aesthetics in design, and seeing is believing. And the second you create something through design, you can transform a brand, an experience, or behavior. And I'm just going to show one example. This is not launched yet, so you guys are the first people to see it. Years ago, we started collaborating with different designers, like Orla Kiley, who's famous for $300 handbags, not $3 soaps. And we created these design series over time. We've been building it up. And then a year ago, we decided to do this partnership with this organization called Creative Growth, based in Oakland, California. And Creative Growth is a studio for about 120 disabled artists. And typically, when you have a disability in the world, it's a disadvantage. But art is about seeing the world differently. And when you have a disability, it allows you to see the world differently. So their art is not only good, it's really, really great. And so we've partnered with them in Target, and we'll be launching this collection in August, working with the artists. And then we'll be doing art shows to support it in both New York and San Francisco. And I just love when altruism and art come together. I think it's a really magical and powerful intersection. So this is what you'll be seeing in store shortly.
There's probably nothing more poignant that an artist can do than create a world that they give you the privilege of entering into with them. It's the way that they're going to tell you about their lives, tell you about their story. Look at me, I'm a person in the world, the same as you, and this is what I'm thinking about. This is who I am.
And I think one of the models we've really figured is the intersection of narcissism and altruism. And that's a lot of what Method has always been about. So we convince you to buy the products for very narcissist reasons. And the packaging, hopefully you find, is beautiful. The fragrances are great. The brand is fun and aspirational. But then underneath it, the altruistic reasons keep you loyal. The fact that it's non-toxic, biodegradable, it's made in a very sustainable way in this soapbox. And creative growth for us is a really great example, we believe, and we're so proud with this organization and what we'll be able to contribute to them financially as well as exposure for the artist. So lastly, as a marketer, all right, so you get the culture right, you get the products right, marketing starts to get really easy. And the way I think about marketing is it's not a department, it is a company. And I could argue the most important marketing person in a company is head of HR. And we do not want brand, even though we do have a brand experience department, to really be in charge of the brand. We want the whole company to feel an ownership of it. So one of the things we do is we train everybody, regardless of what department you work in, to understand the brand. Like, we even want your emails to be in the tone of the brand, and it's something we work really hard at. And when you do that, it also makes it much easier to get everybody on board with really great marketing ideas or design. And, it's about being an authentic culture. And if you walk into our plant or our offices, we want you to feel like you just walked in to the brand, and the people you meet feel authentically like they're part of the brand. And what it does is it really closes the gap of who you are and who you create for. And when you do that, you're no longer following the consumer, you're truly leading the consumer, and that's how you become innovative. So I'll just share one marketing example, which is one of my favorites. When I was a kid, I loved reading the Ben & Jerry's story. And there was one of their more famous stories is when they did the one-man picket line. So Pillsbury was like coming after them, trying to kick them out of the freezer space. And so they went to Pillsbury headquarters with a sign, and it was, "What is the doughboy afraid of?" And it was their one-man picket line. And years ago, I was opening up my mail and got this big package from Clorox, who is our neighbors across the bay. And I was like, that's weird. And in it, they were sending us a cease and desist for using the flower Daisy in any of our marketing materials. And our first ad campaign, even before Evian started putting flowers in their water, was the idea of showing how safe our products are, that even a daisy could live in it. And so we wrote back this charming little letter, like, "Hey, great to hear, from you guys. Seems silly to fight over an icon apiece, so why don't we just let the people decide?" And we left it at that. I would love to have been in the room when they opened it. And a couple days later, it was Earth Day, so this site went up called Vote Daisy. Somehow the New York Times found out about it. And if you would have clicked on this video, this is what you would have seen.
Hey guys, it's Eric. And Adam. We're Method's founders and People Against Dirty. We're here today in San Francisco with our friends, the Daisies.
This Earth Day, we need your help to save the daisy. That's right, that iconic symbol of purity, innocence, and peace. Sadly, a major corporation is claiming that they own the rights to it.
Own the daisy? That's ridiculous. Did they invent the daisy? Did they design the daisy? It's like trying to own the rights to the cucumber, the question mark.
No, seriously. They sent us this cease and desist letter saying that they own the daisy and that we have to stop using it.
So they're essentially saying, don't touch the daisies.
Even though we started using the image of the daisy about 6 years ago just to show how safe our products were because we don't test on animals.
So we just figured we'd test on our little flower friends instead.
And we never tried to own it.
No, because it belongs to Mother Earth. And since daisies can't talk, yet, we asked one of our scientists, and Fred said,
well, the results are in, and while a daisy will last 3 days in Method all-surface cleaner, nothing takes care of daisies better than Mother Nature.
So, since we don't have a lot of money for lawyers or parking spots, we just figured we'd ask you, the public, to decide who should the daisies belong to. Method, Clorox, or Mother Earth?
And while we'd be honored if you voted for Method, we urge you to vote your conscience.
We believe flowers belong to the planet and not corporations.
All right. So the really disappointing thing is we never heard back from Clorox. We were hoping they'd keep fighting. We'd be like, fine, Treasure Island, which is the island in between us, 3 o'clock, tug of war, winner takes all. So it turns out this is a brilliant legal strategy because nobody tried to sue us since because they realized we're crazy enough to put on the internet anything you send us. And we also outsourced all of our legal because we made it so you could download the cease and desist. So all these lawyers wrote on blogs in favor of us. But you saw what we did is we tried to set it up. We had to call out Clorox, but we tried to set up not Clorox as the villain, but the monster of corporations trying to own nature. And that was our way of really making sure we had shared values and bonding with our audience. So lastly, I want to finish up here with a couple things. First, a couple years ago, I decided to start another company. I'm still involved with Method, but I realized I was no longer scared at work. And I think as an entrepreneur, it is really important to be a little scared every morning when you wake up. And Method is going really well. We have all these incredibly smart people, and work was just no longer scary. And so I decided to do something new, and I followed the exact same kind of formula. So it's this company called Ollie. And I was helping Target create this program called Made to Matter, and so we were identifying brands within wellness for the program. We couldn't find anybody we thought was aspirational in the nutrition aisle. So if you ever walk that vitamin aisle, it's probably the aisle you feel the stupidest in. It is so confusing. You need like a PhD in science to understand what half of it is. And you literally stress out trying to choose something that's healthy for you. So that was kind of my clue to dig here and figure out what is the cultural shift. And in this case, figured out that the cultural shift is really this idea of bringing lifestyle, which the way it's been treated in wellness from fitness to cold-pressed juices, nobody was bringing it to this $12 billion category that was growing. And so 2 years ago, we launched Ollie, and we tried to really reframe the category. And it was the same, I'm a one-trick pony, I guess, but it was the same blueprint following Method, where we started with culture. So we set Ollie up. It's in the Park Presidio in San Francisco, so we're in a national park. We've built the whole culture around being the idea of the healthiest place you'll ever work. The product experience, we really simplified it. We laddered everything up to benefits, so it's easy to understand, easy to shop, really beautiful square packaging, something you want to leave out on your counter, and then bringing lifestyle and a real aspirational brand to it. So we're almost our third full year in business. We're going to do over $50 million this year. And hopefully you'll see it in most national stores. And we're just having a lot of fun going in and disrupting a category again. And I just want to close with a couple steps. First of all, I'm really jealous of you guys because, hearing some of the opening, you guys have such a tremendous opportunity. And if I was in your shoes, I'd be looking hard at what the cultural shift is. And it's not hard to find, right? This is Captain Obvious stuff, but you've got the millennial generation who's really taking center stage. No surprise within their formative years. And I'm a big fan of generational marketing, understanding like what happens in your formative years and how that affects your generational outlook through life. So this is a generation, of course, that had the financial crisis hit at a very pivotal time for them in their lives. There's a real mistrust of financial institutions. You guys have probably seen this, but I thought it was really great to see. And for you guys, I think this is all upside, that there's this amazing opportunity and risk. Risk is reward, right, for disruption. So I got household goods covered. So I want to see what you guys are going to do, in banking. And there's, I think, one example of somebody I like getting it right is Acorns. And I think what they're doing, it's a great design aesthetic. It's a brilliant name. And part of what I love is Noah Kerner, who's the CEO there, the way he talks about it is trying to make big decisions easy. But they're really coming off as an advocate for the consumer, and that's the thought I would leave with you guys is if I was in this room, I would be really looking to see how do we move to a model of advocacy and really create not only a brand, but an entire experience that's transparent, that's responsive, and that comes off incredibly honest. And this is an easy strategy for me to sit up here and say, and you guys are probably already on top of this and aware of it. And I was trying to think of a brand, like if there's a financial institution that I would love to see as a brand, it would be SoulCycle, and the way that they cheer you on and they make you believe, for those of you who've done it, that you are greater than you really are when you're dying on that bike. And, this is a generation, too, who their biggest fear is not living life to their potential. And it's not about the material possessions, but it's about the experiences they collect in life. And I don't think I've really seen a financial institution that's tuned into that. But again, this is an easy strategy to identify. It's a hard strategy to execute. And I think the way that it needs to be executed is really going to be through 1,000 little touch points. And if I was setting up a bank or a financial institution today, I would have a creative director and a CMO who are just incredibly artistic and visionary. And I would give them such huge leadership in the company to bring that experience in a very differentiated way. And I think the obvious solution too is to go to the Apple of banking and to create very stark, white, modern. And I would go the opposite. I would look at how do you take the roots of banking, almost the cliche of the 1800s that feels very grounded and real and trustworthy, and put a really modern, fresh twist on it from an aesthetic design experience. I think that would really set you apart from not only the legacy players, but all the other emerging players along the way. So I'm incredibly jealous of the opportunity you guys have in front of you. Best of luck to everybody, and thank you so much for hearing my story.